Muslim world has fallen behind with the achievements of science and technology like it used to be in the past. And there was a reason to it. I mean, if you look at the reason, what happened to the Muslim world, how they became somehow, totally not in forefront of anything. I mean, this is a political thing that happened over long, long years, over the centuries, how the Islamic state, whatever you want to call it, when it was under one Muslim rule, whether it was the Abbasids and the Ottomans and so on. But when they became very corrupt, not implementing Islam themselves, but they weren't really bothered with the achievements of science and technology and culture and so on. So things started becoming decline, and then foreign influences were able to then make it even worse and eventually disintegrate the whole of the Islamic, the autonomy that they had. So the Islamic lands became separated and disintegrated into parts, and they became under colonial rule, the British, the French, and many other countries. So this is when it collapsed, and obviously after that, they haven't still somehow regained this momentum like it was before, because after all this suppression with the colonial rule, that they could not still come up and say, okay, fine. So what happened was the country was under oppressive rule even after the colonials left, the rulers left, and they left with people to rule these countries who were puppet regimes for them, for the people who were initially colonizing them. So in a way still the rulers were oppressing the people, and they're not really being very open to science and technology and development. So that process didn't continue and sort of became stagnant. So what do you expect from people? I mean, if the government doesn't encourage and spend all this effort and money and itself and technologies to build up schools and universities and research centers, you're not going to get people who's going to become scientists from there. So what happened was, from very earlier on within this century and so on, people then started going elsewhere to other lands, like in here. Why are Muslims here? Not because everyone's economic liberation in their country. Some of them came also to expand their the knowledge and the skills that they have, and they started doing research. Now in institutions in Europe and America and
so you're saying elsewhere. It has more to do with the social history.
So Muslims have somehow gone into all these different places now. So you don't see Muslim contribution as a land, but Muslims are involved in research. So whether it's in NASA or in Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard, in Imperial, everywhere there are Muslims there, and they're doing the research. But you don't see now an Islamic contribution to anything, because science is no longer a personal thing of a particular group of people, their color or race or nationality. It's now open to everyone. But it's not happening within the Muslim lands, because the Muslim lands have not taken in the effort to spend and to facilitate this kind of development and research.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah? That's why we don't see it. But previously, like during the time of some of the Caliphs and others, they used to bring even other people elsewhere. Doesn't matter if you're not a Muslim, you join this community of scientists, and then you work and you develop. And that's why when you mentioned about astrology and so on,
I mean, it declined massively by the time of European colonialism.
Yeah. So it's partly because of this, and they haven't really come back to it. And
it's also Europeans, America, they deprive other nations when they have someone knowledgeable. They offer him too much money. If he's earning a tiny bit of money, take it well.
The point I was making, and this is very similar to this, say someone from Pakistan, for example, right? They're very bright minds in Pakistan, and in other countries as well, no doubt. But they did not get the support to do their research. So they would not be able to carry out the research within the country with the facilities they have. So they went elsewhere where they get better treatment, better facilities, better wages, and so on.
That's absolutely correct. But I think there's also, like I said, the historical fact that by the time European colonialism happened, the Muslim world was already pretty stagnant in terms of scientific cultural development. development.
When the whole world
who
was
knows why, but I mean, it might have something to do with the kind of the religious dogmatism.
it's actually to do with, in fact, I would submit it's opposite. When Muslims believed in their religion and practiced it, the religion which encouraged them to explore, because the Quran says, go through the land, go through the earth and explore and see how God originated all of this. They took all of this and then they started exploring and understanding. What did they do the first time? What did they do initially?
But then whenever science comes up with something which doesn't conform to the Quran, Muslims reject it.
No, we'll address that point. We'll address that point. You mentioned this earlier. I'm coming to this point. But just to make this point, when Muslims were taking this seriously to understand this universe that God has created, and God asked them to reflect in this universe so that you can understand God who created all this universe, they made sure the knowledge that they are going to now utilize is something that was solid and something that was really practical. So they started developing the scientific method. What they did initially was to learn from the predecessors. So the Greeks and the Romans or the Egyptians and the Hindus, they had the science. They started gathering this knowledge, started translating books into Arabic. So once you have now the knowledge accessible, they started understanding it and then developing on top of that. So they didn't just understand the issues, they then took the next step of developing and contributing, and that's why they were able to contribute, whether in astrophysics, whether in botany, biology, in chemistry. You can see how they left their mark. That is because precisely they were very much encouraged by the Quran and they were following the Islamic belief system. When they somehow left the Islamic belief, became not of a practical observant believers, and they preoccupied themselves with luxuries of life and women and whatever, this is when they became into decline. This is what happened in those Islamic empires, what people call them, later on, because they were not even bothered. And this is the decline started from there, because then people were not even interested in any of this. They were more interested in women and wine rather than science and technology.
Like the stuff you get in heaven. And I just find it funny, like the way, like all these things which you get given in Muslim heaven are said to be really bad if you get them on earth.
No, it's not absolutely not. This is absolutely not the case.
For example, fornication is really, really bad.
Okay. Why is fornication?
When you die, you can do it all the time.
No, you're not fornicating in heaven. So let's understand this issue. In this life,
what are you doing when
in this life, why fornication is forbidden? Why fornication is forbidden? What is fornication? Sleeping around when you have no legal contract, no marriage between you, right? So you're sleeping with anyone and everyone. This is not a good moral thing to do. So
but it's fine in heaven. So.
We'll understand heaven in a second. Let's understand this life. When Islam says, look, if you're going to have sexual intimacy and so on, have in a bond of marriage, in a legal contract where you're not just, somehow fulfilling your animal desires, like people put it. You're going to actually look after this person, love and take care. And out of this, there will be your progeny, your children, which you'll look after. If there is no legal contract, that means you can just kick out or kick over, whatever you call it, you don't like it anymore, and then you have all these problems. And that's why, like in this society, for example, now you can contextualize it, where people, they can just have affairs and then that's it. Just break up and leaving what? Children with one-parent families and a lot of problems. Islam says no, to build a society, you have to build from the very unit, which is the family. Family is important, and that unit then makes up the whole society at large. So this is why things are restricted. Islam doesn't say, oh, no kind of sexual relationship, but have that in a system.
But then when you get to heaven, you get like these women kind of creatures who you have sex with them, then they become virgins again.
No. In heaven, this is the reward that you have. So, for example,
But he could have made the world like that as well. If he wanted to. I mean, the only reason why sleeping around, fornicating has all the kind of problems that you talked about, the consequences, the bad consequences, is because of the way supposedly God designed the world.
No, this world is not made to be like heaven.
Right, but it could have been if you wanted.
No, it's not made into heaven. This world is there created. human beings with free will, to make sure that we know whether we are going to go to a place of eternal happiness and bliss or a place of eternal suffering. Okay, so we're not going to directly go there. This is an intermediary step where we live our life and see whether we actually deserve this bliss or suffering. Bliss or suffering. So, no. Happiness and bliss. Whatever makes you happy. If food makes you happy, you will have all that food that you desire. Yeah? If you want companionship, you will have companionship. So anything that is going to make you happy and joyful and entertaining, that's awaiting and more. This is some examples that God has given, what's awaited.
Alcohol?
You will have drinks that will not befog your mind, that will not intoxicate you. Right? So whether you call it alcohol, but it is not the alcohol like we know today. Yeah? So entertainment and happiness and bliss, everything will be there for you. But this is something that you deserve to do. You should make yourself deserve of it. So this life is a test. So if you can fulfill that test and then you're successful, then this is what awaits you.
Okay, I mean on that point, I don't really understand that part because okay, you said we got free will, so it's a test of our free will. But then in the Quran, Allah also says that everything that happens is because He wills it. And he guides those He wants to guide, and He leads those who He doesn't want to guide.
So
it's all His fault?
No, because you need to understand the Quran within the contextual framework of the Quran. The Quran says very clearly, the ultimate will is the will of God. Nothing can happen unless He wills. That means if a person is about to stab someone, that person may have will to stab, but if God didn't will it, that thing will not materialize ever. Nothing, no actions will materialize unless God wills it. For example, I can will, I'll meet you tomorrow, 10 o'clock, right? Yeah, and I die the next minute. I was not control of my actions. I can will it, but the one who materializes and manifests will into actions is when God wills it. So we cannot will things to happen unless He wills. So that's the general understanding. God has to will things to happen. Right. Now, how are we given free will? We are given free will to a certain extent. We don't have free will. If I will to fly, grow wings, I can't do that. It's not going to happen. No. As you can see, if I want to, like, according to what I will, I'm not able to do that because I'm constrained by certain things. So my free will given is within the constraint of a framework. I can operate within this will. For example, I can have a knife and eat an apple with it or stab someone. But this will that I have, that I'm going to use, I will be responsible for it. I will be responsible for it. So the consequences of me exercising the will is on me, not on God. Because God might say, okay, fine, you will someone to stop, and that happens.
But He does explicitly say He guides who He wills.
Coming to this, about this guidance.
So that's basically saying that if you go to heaven, that's because He wanted you to, and if you go to hell, that's because He wanted you to.
Let's not conflate guidance and will. First, to clarify, is the will and manifestation of actions. Actions can never proceed unless God wills. Right? As you say, you can will everything, but nothing will happen because God doesn't will it. So, controller of actions is God and His will. If He doesn't will it, nothing will happen. So, our will, that we want to do something, we have this limited capacity. So, for example, if I say, no, I'm not going to speak to you, I just walk away. I can do that. But if God willed otherwise, I will be still continuing to talk to you, for example. Because even though I will, but ultimately there's the will of God. So we give you several examples of how the wills are different.
So if He wanted to,
God doesn't force us.
Make someone realise that what they're doing is wrong, He could.
But He chooses now again, we need to conflate. We're discussing a bit more. When we're talking about guidance and will, there's two different things. One will is God will things to happen. Okay? God says very clearly, He doesn't will for us to disbelieve. He doesn't will for us to disbelieve. He wants us to believe. And what He does is this, for this reason, He gives us guidance whether we are grateful to Him or ungrateful. In the Quran it says very clearly, إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. Allah has guided us whether we are grateful or ungrateful. So there's one level of guidance. Everyone received this guidance. And this guidance of God continuously comes to people, whether they're grateful or not. But there are special type of guidance where it's, if you ask for guidance, God will then give you, more guidance. If you say, God, open my heart and so on.
I mean, he seems a bit incompetent, because if he wanted to...
What do you mean by incompetent?
Well, if you want, I mean, you could just appear and do something amazing right now and be like, this is me, I exist, worship me. And everyone would be like, oh, there's no doubt now, we all know it's true.
If that happens now, would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, if it was that bloody obvious.
Do you really think?
I mean, there's no proof.
Wait.
All the evidence, all the so-called clear signs or whatever.
No, let's take your example. Let's take your example.
We've brought these clear signs. They're not clear at all.
Let's take your example.
It's so
you see someone in the sky.
Most people don't believe.
Let's take your example. You see someone in the sky, he says, I am God, and he speaks to you, and you're going to believe that it's God Almighty, right?
Well, I mean, it depends exactly what happens.
You see, now you have doubt. People even claim...
What I'm saying is, listen, that's a good point, but what I'm saying is that if he's God, all powerful, it should be within his ability to make us, to give us something which is so completely irrefutable that there's no way that we could sort of doubt it. Instead, what he does is he kind of, goes to some guy supposedly in the middle of the desert in a cave and says, here I am, write this book over 23 years old, or speak it, and then eventually everyone will believe. I mean, it's like the worst possible way that you could go about doing this.
This is a very misunderstanding of how
it's so easy to believe that all of that is fake.
Let's clarify.
Right?
This is such a misunderstanding of how God communicates with his creation. First and foremost, as I said about guidance comes throughout human life. People wish to neglect it themselves because of their biases and prejudices, and because of their whims and desires. They see the guidance, but they don't want to. For example, when you see a idol worshipper worshipping an idol, concentrating, a dog comes along, urinates in the idol, he just wakes up and says, what? Defilement, defilement. He starts chasing the dog. As he starts chasing the dog, he realizes, how can this be my God? My God couldn't even protect himself from being defiled by a dog. That was the spark of guidance. When he says, no.
Ilyas is here, you can come with him.
Okay, inshallah. So, you see, that moment, that was a spark of guidance to him. But if he then neglected it and saying, no, I'm going to kill that dog anyway, and then I concentrate on worshipping. He missed the opportunity which came to him. Throughout the life of a human life, guidance comes. For example, sometimes they really say, oh God, help me, take the suffering away from me. If you save me from this sinking ship, I will believe. At that point, they knew God exists very clearly in their heart. But when they are now on the shore, they say, oh, good captain, you saved me. They then what? Become arrogant and stubborn and ungrateful. So God gives us guidance throughout. People know it, but they neglect. We are told that even before we are on this planet, God even testified from us. Alastu bi rabbikum. They all said, qalu wala. They all testified.
But what you're saying is it's just disproven by the fact that even those who do believe in God don't necessarily believe in your God.
We are talking about first. Okay. I can walk. What you're saying is now you're trying
in all
to...
sorts of different gods, and they have done throughout history.
Please, you are not trying to conflate the existence of God with the multiplicity of God's understanding and concepts. Two issues at a time. Whether there's a divine providence, there's a divine agent which interferes and communicates and intervenes with people's life. Whether this is one, two, or many, this is a different question altogether. Firstly, the existence of such a conscious entity who is, the supreme, the Almighty. Because belief system in a deity is an Almighty Creator, mighty God, powerful, someone who can listen to your prayers. Then is another question, which one is it? It's a different question altogether. So when we come about talking about these things about guidance, God gives throughout. People, as I mentioned to you, people neglect this guidance. In the Quran.
This is what I'm saying. It seems so incompetent. He's constantly going, I gave him all these signs. I don't understand why they're not following my orders.
Listen, when you say incompetent, God doesn't want people to be forced into belief. He's given you the free will, given us the free will. You, using your free will, you believe in whatever you want to believe. You believe in whatever you want to believe. If you know for sure, for example, when the Prophet and Messenger comes, the evidence is very clear to you, this is indeed a messenger of God and revelation is from God.
It obviously wasn't clear because so many people disbelieved him.
Not because of no evidence. They knew the evidence was clear, but they disbelieved.
Yeah, they disbelieve. A lot
Because-
of people
No,
disbelieve
no.
Muhammad.
So, brother, please, just one moment, please.
I mean, if it was so like blindingly obvious.
People were demanding, even the Quran says, even if there were stairs going up to heaven, there were mountains of gold and so on, right? As they were demanding, there were people who would not disbelieve. Why? Because the evidence is not what makes them believe or disbelieve. They would not simply believe because of something that they have, some kind of obstacles which is to do with arrogance and stubbornness and pride. People saw Moses parting the Red Sea. They knew it is impossible act for any human being to do. This is a miracle by the permission of God. If they don't believe even after seeing that, you can't say there was no evidence for it. When the Prophet ﷺ, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came and did so many miracles and people saw them and still after that people didn't believe, it's not because the absence of...
What miracles did he do?
For example...